is, or the starting point for that paper, is the idea that governments of all kinds, both democracies and autocracies, would always want to paint a rosier picture and to say that things are better than what they actually are. What I do in the paper is I focus on two measures of economic activity. One that is the GDP figures that countries self-report, and the other nighttime lights that are recorded by satellites from outer space and are much less prone to manipulation. The main sample period in the paper is 1992 to 2013, which is somewhat determined by the availability of the data from the nighttime lights. The main finding of the paper is that if you compare two countries in which, say, the nighttime lights grow the same amount, 1%, 5%, whatever, and these two countries, one of them is more authoritarian than the other, it ends up being the case that in that more authoritarian country, the reported GDP tends to be larger for that same amount of growth in lights. And that is kind of the main evidence that suggests that the GDP figures, the GDP growth may be overstated in these authoritarian regimes. The method that I use that exploits the night lights and the GDP, in any one country, at any one point in time, the relationship between these two measures can vary for all sorts of reasons. Some countries are more developed than others. The economic structure varies. Some countries are more agricultural. Some countries rely more on government spending. Some places are more urbanized. And of course, all of these factors are going to affect how much light is produced and whether that light reflects economic activity or not. So a nice thing of the method that I use is that to the extent that I'm pulling data from many different countries over many different years, all of these kind of idiosyncratic country-specific factors will tend to wash away. With this data, I think that certainly the findings are at least a wake-up call or a warning sign for the people that consume this information, ranging from, say, investors that are thinking where to place their money, but also academics like me that use this data on a regular basis. Another one, which I discuss in the paper somewhat, has to do with potential policy remedies. So for instance, the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, has been developing for several years now some type of certification procedure by which it acknowledges which countries have more transparent and timely methods of production of their national statistics. China joined this certification process, which is known as the SDDS, the Special Data Dissemination Standard. China joined this a few years ago. So in that sense, there is some sense in which, say, the Chinese data may be more trustworthy nowadays than it was in the past.